Hello.
Hi, I'm Dr. Varisa Perlman with La Petite Creme, and I'd like to welcome you to our podcast where we chat about child rearing, self care, but then within the context of medical education information. And we are here with our favorite nurse practitioner, Paige Williams-White.
Yes.
So, the topic this week I'd like to talk about is fever. So, when I say the word fever, what comes to mind for you?
Textbook over 100.4.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Right?
Well, and I think that that's actually interesting because we learn certain things about fever and then we have to apply it and then we have to explain it. So I think it's really good to actually start with the definition of what a fever is,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So it's true, it's 100.4 or above. Now, how is it being measured? That's gotten a little bit interesting, right?
Exactly. Yep.
So that's a really important question. So when you go to see a medical practitioner of any sort, they're going to ask you how it was measured,
Yep.
right? How do you like it being measured?
So it depends on which kid I'm measuring. I know last week we kind of did our little intro. I have three kids, three different ages. Depends on the kid.
Yes.
My infant, rectal. That's my go-to.
Yes.
That's how I know what's going on. He's only 6 months old. So
Yeah.
that's always going to be a rectal temperature for me.
What do you use?
The little thermometer, the one with the pointed end, and I
Right?
just so
The
if I'm
digital
being the digital,
and you lubricate a little bit.
and I was just gonna say if I'm being fancy, I'm lubricating the end a little bit and just
Yeah.
popping it in there. But
Yeah.
that's the way to get the most accurate for him. Especially, I don't feel like you
Yes.
can accurately just feel a baby and tell if they have a fever or
Right.
not.
Right. I
Um,
would often tell people, especially with babies, because we put a lot of blankets on them a lot of times, especially
mm-hmm.
when they're little.
Yep,
I'm like, undress them for like a minute,
exactly,
kind of see what their temperature is, and then do the rectal temp. Because if you do it with a bunch of blankets on them,
exactly.
you're going to get a false reading, right? And
Yep.
especially less than 2 months old, we need that to be absolutely accurate because above 100.4 has certain kind of consequences.
Yes.
Okay, right?
I
Right,
love
to
that
say the
term.
least.
Some consequences.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So we have to talk about that. We'll talk about that later. But in terms of the measuring, I think people get kind of like, I don't want to stick that in there. I'm getting really nervous. It's not the whole thing. It's not even the
No.
size of the tip of your finger, literally half of the tip of your finger. It
Just
doesn't have to be a big
tipping it
one.
in.
Just a
Exactly.
did, right? Okay,
Yep.
so and then sometimes if people are like, I'm really nervous, undress them, and then you can even screen them with the other versions
Mm-hmm.
to see, like, the forehead, the binky, but to really know your doctor's going to really want a rectal thermometer for an infant.
Exactly.
Okay, so what about older? What do you do for them?
So I know everyone is trending towards the head boop boop. It's quick, it's easy, the kid isn't crying. Those aren't always my favorite either. I'm sorry to everyone who
Hmm.
uses those, but you
Hmm.
can literally get three different temperatures in one sitting on those. And
Hmm.
I might use those as like a backup after I've medicated. But before that, I'm either doing the one, I do have the one that you can place in the ear,
Hmm.
and that will give me one. I'm super old school though with my older two, and I like to
Yeah.
pop it right under the arm and I hold it
Yes.
there, and I know that they're complaining and they want to move and go, but for me, I feel like that's how I get the most accurate for them.
And of note, when you put it under the underarm,
Yes,
you add a degree.
yes, yes,
All
yes,
right. So
yes,
everybody
yes.
knows that the only time you do not add a degree is when it's on under the tongue or in the rectum. But if you get a temperature underneath the armpit, you're going to, and I love the digital ones these days. We're not doing any mercury things anymore. We're just doing the digital ones. It'll beep, it'll come out, and then you just add a degree. They might even have an axillary setting that will
Yeah,
give you the axillary temperature, I think, with an added degree.
that's
So,
that's the one I use. Yes.
right. So those are really wonderful. And then the older kids under the
Under
tongue,
the tongue.
fantastic, right? And
Yep.
that one gives you a really good temperature.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've talked a little bit about what a temperature is, a fever is specifically, and then what are great ways to measure it. As a practitioner, when you're talking about fever, I think that what we get lost with as both parents and as practitioners is that we get kind of too focused on like how
The
high
number.
it is, right? Everyone's really terrified.
That
There was a
number.
period in training, they would say anything above 105, 107, it could be harmful to the child. I've heard some people dispel that. Some kids are really high temperature
Ex-
kids
I was
and some
just
kids
gonna say.
aren't. So,
Yep.
right? It's so don't get nervous that we necessarily are in a crucial situation. I think that when you're looking at fever, kids will not look good with fever.
Exactly. Thank you. So many times, no, because, and I understand as parents, oh my gosh, it's the fever, they're not looking good. They don't want to eat. They're not eating. They're not. And I'm like, yes, you cannot
Yes.
expect your kid to have this fever and be ready to run up and down. Their body
Hmm.
is fighting something. Let the body do what it's doing,
Hmm.
and you go from there. But
Yes.
oftentimes we get the parents who come in and they're, losing it because their child isn't acting their normal self. And it's like,
Yeah.
yes, this is what it's supposed to
Yes.
be.
And that's why you'll see a lot of offices, and or when you go into the
Hmm.
doctors or go into the urgent care, they're going to want to bring that temperature down in front of them so that they can see what the baseline is, how the kid
Exactly.
feels. And it is of concern to us that if we bring that fever down and the kid doesn't perk up, that's of concern. One of the things in
Exactly.
pediatrics, we are actually vets of a different species. So we are not that different. So a lot of times we have to work a lot on how the mood is and how kids are feeling and how they are behaving. So you'll say a situation perhaps where the fever is not that high, but the kid's kind of out of it, a little disoriented, and we will get very nervous as practitioners. On the other hand, we'll have a kid who has maybe a little bit of a high fever, but is running around the office. And we're like, that is information for us, right? So it's just as important as the height of the fever as how the baby or the
Yeah,
child looks.
exactly.
Okay. Um, the other part of fever that we don't really talk about as clearly as we should is context, right? Fever is just a symptom.
Symptom.
It's just a symptom. It's one of the symptoms of multiple things.
Yep.
So when a doctor hears that you have fever, they're going to ask 10, 15 more questions because they need to know what is surrounding that fever because that gives them information as to what the possible source of the fever is,
Exactly. Length of time.
right?
How long have you been having the fever? When you give
Yes.
the medication, does it break? Does it not? Does the child return to
Hmm.
baseline after you medicate? Do they not? Are there other symptoms? When did they begin?
Yes.
All the things. There's so many things that go into it
Hmm.
besides just addressing the number that you see
Yes.
on the thermometer.
Correct. And one of the things that I thought was really helpful for me when I was training was the idea of a curve, right? The TMAX curve. So this is something that I would ask patients often and just kind of give them a little primer on how to kind of, in some ways, present the fever curve to your doctor because it gives, again, a lot of information. So the TMAX is the highest fever, highest temperature that the baby's or the child reaches that day within 24 hours. So Monday, the highest temperature was 103. Tuesday, the highest temperature was 101. Wednesday, the highest temperature was 100.4. That gives us context.
Yep.
It gives us a trend. Medicine loves trends, right? Because it gives us a sense, right, that things are actually changing.
Exactly.
And when things are changing, that gives us a sense of what direction we're going. That is a very different picture to the temperature is 101. The highest temperature is 102. Now the highest temperature is 104. This is an
Why are we
escalating
going up?
fever,
Exactly.
right? Why are we going up? Or in some diagnoses, even having a 104 as the Tmax, the 104 again, a 104. So when we have kind of persistently high temperatures, we need to know that. This gives us context. We are not asking it to be annoying. We are asking it because we don't get enough information by just a snapshot of a fever on one day,
And it tells us what to
right?
do next. What is the next step?
Correct, correct. And what we're looking for. So let's talk a little bit about like a bacterial versus a viral infection,
Okay.
right? So something that I saw a lot in medicine was this idea, especially with pediatrics, is that viruses happen all the time.
Hmm.
So sometimes a virus can actually give you a really high temperature. So
Hmm.
say it's about maybe 105, right? But then next day is 104, and the next day is 103. And then all of a sudden, sometimes it'll just kind of go down.
Yep.
And there'll be this wonderful period where there's no fever. It's kind of like the calm before the storm. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's
No.
nice and calm. There's no fever. The kids are a little tired, but there's no runny nose or cough. And the parents are like, we're
We've
done.
made it.
It's over, right? The fever is just basically, to me, basically your body's immune system calling out the troops, saying, come on
Yep.
down. We need you, white cells. And
Yep.
what the white cells and various cells show themselves as is mucus. Mucus is your friend as long as it leaves. If it does not leave, it's not your
We have an
friend.
issue.
Okay, so we have these high fevers. The virus is calling the mucus. So a lot of people are confused. They're like, why is you stuffier after the fever is gone? That's because the fever has done its job.
Exactly.
It's called the troops, right? And where we have, and so to me, I always tell people that little quiet time, that is your like time to act. It's not a time to go to sleep, it's a time to act.
Nope. Get that
Get the saline out. Right.
Exactly. No, seriously, this is the
So
time.
Paige was one of my patients. She knows how I think.
And that is still how I
And-
think. With all of
You
my
gotta
children.
I love it. I love it. So you got to get the salt water, right? Because the
Yeah.
saline, the sprays in the
Let's
nose,
clear
or
it out.
gargle, anything
Flush
you
it
can think
out.
of, pulls the mucus out, right? Because again, the biggest problem with children is that the eustachian tubes are like this. They don't drain like this. Their drainage systems are really poor. So because they're so poor, they have a higher likelihood of converting over into a bacterial infection. And what that is that all that mucus then doesn't leave, and it becomes a beautiful little petri dish for a bacterial infection to get comfortable. I love those commercials that they used to have where they have the parties and the sinus and stuff. And I'm just like, that is in my
That is
mind. It's
exactly
like,
what
yes,
it
that's
looks
the
like.
visual. That's the visual of what it looks like. That's
Yep.
forever, right?
Yeah.
So all that mucus sits in there. And all of a sudden, 3 days after that fever went away, now you're starting to get 100.2, 101. And that's where you show up to my office or to your urgent care. Like, why is this fever back? And that is correct, because you might now have an ear infection. You might have a little bit of bronchitis. You might have, God forbid, a pneumonia, something more urgent. So where that mucus is stuck, and it's basically like a candle and wax, basically heating up the system is the way the body tries to make that mucus start to get thinner and come out. So some people will say, started having a little bit of a fever come back, and then he threw up a bunch of mucus and he feels a lot better.
And
Or he had a lot
I
of
was
loose
just gonna say,
stools.
and we're like, yes, it's
Yes.
leaving. We're
And
getting
I'm
it
so
out.
excited. I'm you know, I get like physically excited when I hear that. And I'm like, you're coming out of it. Or some people will say, I saw green mucus. I'm like, that's awesome, right? That's the thick stuff sitting down in the back that's finally coming out. So the more that comes out, the better. And you actually have something called insensible water loss, where they can get a little bit dehydrated because of all of the losses of all the mucus. So kind of getting an electrolyte water of some sort would be very helpful to kind of replace those.
And that is why we
Right?
say hydration is super important during that
Super,
fever
right?
time. All the parents are worried
Correct.
about the eating, and I'm like, drink.
Drink.
That is so
Absolutely.
important.
And they'll sweat sometimes with the fever. So, okay. So now we kind of understand, right? We've defined fever. We've talked a little bit about how to understand fever within the context of illness.
Yep.
More controversial, how to treat fever. Go ahead.
Once again, actually, I actually love this because for my first child, I did treat the fevers as I saw them because her reaction was very different than my next child. And I'll explain. My
Go.
oldest, she, as scary as this sounds, she never had a seizure, but she actually would also have like hallucinations
Got
sometimes
it.
when
Yep.
she would have the
Totally.
fever. And
Yep.
they were scary. And
Yeah.
in the beginning, I was one of those, let's watch and see, let's see what her body does. But once the hallucinations started to occur with fever, as soon as I would see it, I would treat it. Only because she reacted differently.
Correct.
My second one now, it's like night and day. Sometimes I don't even realize that she has the fever because she's still
Sure.
running around and playing. And then I go to give her a hug and I'm like, whoa, you are
You're
burning up.
heating up.
So
Yep. Yep.
sometimes I do something different with her. Sometimes I might just do a cold compress, see how it goes, see, I still
Mm-hmm.
check the temperature. I still check to
Yep.
see where we're at and such. But I don't mind doing other things for her to see
Hmm.
how her body reacts before I jump to medicate her. Um,
Yeah.
so
I
yeah,
think that's brilliant. Yeah. Yeah. I think that it has to be tailored to the kid. And you might have a kid, like I said, who has a high temperature and is just running around like nothing, right? That seems
yep,
like your second one.
yes,
Febrile seizures is something that does happen, within a certain age range, like less than 5 and whatnot. And some people are more prone to it. It tends to be genetic, but those kids we tend to
we
probably
treat.
treat a little bit quickly just to
Yes,
kind of bring that down because it doesn't have to be a high temperature in order for them to have a febrile seizure, right?
exactly.
So those are kind of populations where we're a little quicker with the medication. I think that where we've kind of moved as a society versus like definitely giving them medicine all the time is trying to understand that the fever has a job too. So there's an
Exactly.
element to it, assuming that your kid is pretty calm and feeling pretty good and they can rest a little bit. So one of the things that people forget so much is there's a lot of tools that you have other than medicine. So being able to do something called evaporative loss is really wonderful, which means the baby or the child gets as naked as possible, right? And what you do, you maybe have like a little bit of a bowl with a little bit of ice water. You take a cloth, right? And you kind of put it in there. And it seems kind of rude. They may not enjoy that, but my kids never would take the medicine. So I became really good at what I like to call the wipe down. So what it ends up being, there are certain pulse points in your body. So that's
Oh,
around your neck, underneath your armpit, the
yeah.
groin area. And what you end up doing is that you don't leave it there because you want it to evaporate the heat off. So there's a lot of like wiping, letting it heat. And if you feel that cloth, it feels warm. It's
Warm.
kind of creepy. Like,
Yep.
though, there's a little bit of that warmth that's on that cloth. That's why you have to have the basin with the cold water.
Yep.
There. We're not talking about alcohol, people. I know there's a whole generation that does like, I put them in an alcohol bath. I get it. That was a thought. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about good old fashioned cold
Just some
water.
cold
Remember the first
water.
time someone told me that? I was just like, no. And sometimes people will say a lukewarm bath, right?
Yeah.
The problem with the lukewarm bath is it has to be a shallow bath.
Yeah.
It's not helpful if they're under the water. Does it make sense? So lukewarm is like room temperature water,
Yep.
right? So you kind of want to make it kind of a shallow bath so that you can kind of splash that water on those pulse points. It evaporates, it pulls off the heat,
Yep.
right? And so when you're able to kind of bring down the temperature, let them be relatively comfortable, right? So that they can rest and whatnot. What I like to do is I like to do Tylenol during the daytime if you need to. And then Motrin at night because it lasts a little bit longer. Remember, the Motrin
Exactly.
can irritate the stomach. So they have to have eaten, but I like them to sleep. That is a time where I'll definitely give them because sleep is medicine. So being able to sleep is really important. During the daytime, I don't want to automatically give it because I want to know if that fever is wanting to
It's
come up.
doing
You won't know that if you are constantly
giving the
medicating them.
Motrin. Yep.
I'm going to say something that is a little bit controversial, but it needs to be said. Your child wakes up with a fever of 103 at 6 in the morning, and if you give them Motrin and the fever goes down, you can't bring them to school.
Oh man, thank
Your
you.
body,
Thank
you
you.
did not, you did not, you
You
covered a
did not
symptom.
get rid of
Yeah,
what they had. You did
you
not
did
get
not
rid of
hear
the
them.
germ. It's not
You
gone.
didn't hear them. Okay, so I know. Please don't do that.
Oh
So the
man.
idea is that, I love them to be fever free for at least 24
24
hours
hours.
before they go back to school. I would love them to not have boogies before they go back to school. I know it's kind of a hard thing, but
Yeah.
it is, kind of part of what I would love. But no fever for 24 hours at the least.
Yep.
So just need to kind of say that. So when you kind of do that with the temperature, now you can kind of feel out what other symptoms come along with it, get a little bit of an idea of the patterning, and really try to look beyond just that one snapshot. Like, it
Exactly.
gives context when you talk to your practitioner. There are situations where we are going to be more concerned, less than 2 months old, less than 3 months old.
The
If
period of
there's a rectal
time.
temperature, right, of above 100.4 at any point, they do need to be seen either in an ER setting or right in the hospital, because that point the immune system is really poor. So we're
Exactly.
not sure if it's going to go into the bloodstream or into the spinal fluid or into the urinary tract. So those are areas or times where we are
It's
going
an
to have a lot more
automatic,
urgency to
yeah,
it.
emergency room visit,
Yeah.
not even urgent care.
Yes.
Any infant that would
Yeah.
come into the
Yeah.
urgent
Don't go to
care,
an urgent care. Yeah.
straight
We'll
to
probably
emergency
send
room.
them.
Yeah.
Now, there's some kind of caveats. I know that they're doing research on like checking for RSV, and if the RSV is positive, they might kind of like. So a lot of that is shifting around. But you're better off going to a children's hospital if possible,
Yeah.
to the emergency room so that they can do further testing if necessary.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
I think we didn't mention actually one other thing with fever, and then rash with roseola.
Oh.
Fever can kind of like, right. So I've had
Mm-hmm.
that a couple times where it's a high fever, and there's something called fever of unknown origin. So fever of unknown origin is where we have a fever, and it can be hard because it might be the beginning of an illness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they might do testing for different viruses, right?
Yep.
But we also want to make sure to a certain degree that it's not something that we can't see.
Mm-hmm.
So, meaning that there's something in the blood, that there's something in the urinary tract, right, that we can't really always get a handle of.
Yep.
So, there might be, a urine sample taken, whether it be catheterization or with a bag. Um, there might be further blood work. But if you are an immunized child, chances are a lot of what they call the invasive organisms will
Mm-hmm.
not be causing that fever, which is what we had seen. My parents were both pediatricians, and in their generation, they saw a lot of bacteremia, meaning bacteria in
Yes.
the bloodstream. They saw a lot more of that than we did when we were in training because of the fact that they did not have access to the vaccines for the Haemophilus influenza B, which is not flu, just it's a bacteria, and pneumococcal, right? So these
Exactly.
are both organisms that would go into the bloodstream, even though they started like in the ear.
Yep. And you're right. We
Um,
don't see that as much at all. I don't think I've
Thankfully.
seen. Yeah. Actually. Yeah. No. Only when I was in the hospital setting.
Yeah, yeah. So I think just to kind of sum it up, your kid has a fever. Try not to panic, because it's really important to understand that that fever is a symptom.
See how they're acting. Are they,
Yes.
are we lethargic? Are we able to move around?
Yeah.
Can we keep water down? Are we,
Hmm.
there's so many different things that we're looking at, before we
Yeah.
have to go into a panic. And I love what
Right.
you said about the trend. That was a big
Yeah.
question I always used to ask in my questionnaire,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay,
Hmm.
what was it the first day? Did it come down? Did your child
Yeah.
start to eat a little bit more? Did they start
Right.
moving a little bit more? I have some parents that would come in to the urgent care on day 3, and they're still
Hmm.
having the fever, and I don't know what's going on. And when
Yeah.
you sit and you trend it with them, and then you're
Right.
asking them how the child is doing, they almost
Yeah.
would take themselves out of the panic sometimes. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right.
Yes.
They are looking, things are
Yes.
looking a little bit better. Um,
Mhm.
so yes, all those things are
Yes.
great points.
So, right. So look at your kid with and without the fever. Give us a sense of the trend. Give us other symptoms that are going on, right? And together we figure out what we're looking at, and we kind of give a sense of what we expect to happen, and what can we assess from testing and whatnot at that time. Um,
And I
yeah,
think
it's
one
it's
of
it's
the best, you made note of this as well, when we were talking about not sending to school within that 24-hour period, when you noted that rest is some of the best medicine. And I think a
yeah.
lot of parents, and even myself sometimes, I have to remind myself, even if the fever is gone, the fever might
Yeah.
not be there, but if my child is still, the mucus is, they're still coughing, they're still not back
Hmm.
at their baseline, maybe take that extra day, even without the fever. Take that extra day for the rest. Let's get us back to the baseline, because then we don't want to throw them back in. Yeah, the fever's not there, but our immune system hasn't built all the way back up.
Yes.
We throw them back into school amongst, more germs, and we're right back at square one. So,
Yes. I
definitely.
love that you brought this up. This is actually something that is actually, and I'm sure that you see it in your, when you were practicing as well, this urgency, this incredible amount of FOMO.
When can they go back to school?
And not, not even just, I mean, partially the kids, but definitely the parents more than anything. And this idea that rest, I always would say that illness is not your enemy. It's not your enemy. It's a wonderful kind of like, hey, buddy, like it's your body being like, you need to take it down a notch. You need to kind of take out those birthday parties. Just let me sleep all weekend. Like it is actually a wonderful communication of your body to you. You just have to hear it. So I will see people kind of, oh my God, but there's this big party that I wanted them to go to. And, I really want to make sure that they're well. And we want to do this, or we need to want to take this trip, or we really want to do all these things. And in the end of the day, like your kid's going to be miserable. Even if you medicate them,
Yeah, it comes
they're
from that.
not going to heal. They're going to still feel like crap. And so in many ways, it's a nice kind of reset for your life where the whole family's like, you know what? This kid's sick. The whole family, let's just lay low this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to tell you, it will come at the right time. It's just your body being like, help us out. And you'd be surprised how good it feels as a family to be able to like unschedule your weekend
Yep.
and be like, we're just going to hang out so that he doesn't get worse.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, if you say, hey, I'm going to drag the whole family to all these things, guess who else is going to get sick within like 2 minutes?
Exactly.
The whole group.
Yep.
So a lot of times when I get sick, I literally sit there. And this is where if I had patients who were willing to kind of humor me in my preventative care initiative, they would get sick. We would talk about the illness. We would talk about what we were going to do. And then I kind of stop and I say, so tell me what's been going on with the family for the last 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And usually it's like, we have been nuts.
Nonstop.
Like it's been my mother's birthday, and then we went traveling to here,
The
and then they had
sports
this
and the.
thing at school, and da da da. And I'm always like, this might have brought us here. Like this again, everything
Yeah.
within context. Why don't we kind of look back through the schedule and kind of see, hey, if we have 2 birthdays there, we don't maybe need to go to that third event as well.
Exactly.
Like, let's try to see if we can try kind of unschedule ourselves so that we don't come back here into illness.
Exactly. Exactly.
You
And that
know?
that's exactly my point. And I think, this day and age too, we like our kids active. I understand that.
Hmm.
But the schedules these days for a lot of people are jam packed.
Jam packed,
And
right?
it's crazy, and we have to remember, these are little ones. Even for ourselves as
Yes.
adults. But for our little
Yes.
ones, we have to remember sometimes just taking that Saturday afternoon after the soccer game to just come
Yeah.
home and relax
Yes.
is okay. You don't have to run
It's
to the next
okay.
birthday party. And a lot of people are,
Yes.
we have to keep the kids going, and it's yes, but then their body will tell them when to sit
Yes.
down, and it's not going to be the most fun for everyone. So I am
Yes.
preaching to myself even on this one, because, I look at the weekend and I'm like, okay, what do we have scheduled? What are we going to do? And
Yes.
I have to even tell myself sometimes, you know what? Let's keep it
Yeah.
open. Let's
Yeah.
sit on the couch and watch a movie with the children. Let's play a board game. Let's do
Yeah.
something like that this weekend. We don't have to schedule a play date. We don't
Yeah.
have to, we're always
Yes.
trying to schedule, and it's okay.
To me, the whole phrasing in my mind was schedule unscheduled time.
Mm.
Put it in there as a nice big block of like nothing.
Yep.
And yes, the weekends for sure. I'm going to push you a little further to like the weekdays, those days. And I had a pair of parents I was speaking to, and they were having it. They were fighting with each other. They couldn't figure out why. And it turns out that their youngest hasn't been sleeping at night. And guess what? When their youngest hasn't been sleeping, they
They
haven't been
haven't been
sleeping.
sleeping.
We are grown people. We are not able to like sustain sleeplessness, right? And so
Exactly.
it became very clear to me that like you were kind of not giving yourself enough room
Yeah,
to understand that like you're human too, and you can't expect to live off of like 4 hours of sleep and be your best self.
exactly.
So each day, kids need a time to kind of unwind. After school activities, fine, but give them an hour or two before they have to do homework, or like they have to do, if you do the math, that doesn't really always exist
No.
before they have to like eat dinner and take a shower. There's just so many things. Find time. It doesn't have to be a scheduled activity. Maybe like right we pick up from school, you literally go. I call it basement time. I was like, just go to the basement. They just I
We have
lost them for
quiet
a couple
time.
hours, right?
Yeah. My
It's a
three-year-old
big
says
difference.
it best. My 3-year-old's,
Yeah.
Mommy, I just want to relax. Me too, honey.
Yeah.
Let's go relax.
Right.
And I listen to her.
And yes, because she's. I know we think, oh, they've been in school. Like, what do they need to relax? School's
It
stressful. They
is.
have to sit somewhere for a long time. They have to get up. They have to follow in a line. They have to go somewhere else. They need to go play outside. It's not always that fun. They have to do this. Like by the end of the day, they're like, okay,
Have
it's been a day for me.
Have you been in
Yeah.
a first grade classroom
Yeah.
recently?
Yeah. It's a lot.
Because
It's a
I look
lot.
at that teacher sometimes and I'm like, oh,
Like, God
God
bless.
bless you. This is a
God
lot.
bless.
All day. No, honey, sit
Right?
down,
All
do
day.
this, take out
Yes.
your books, do this quietly, get in the line. No, of course, by the
No.
time your child comes home, they need, give them a
Yes.
second.
Give them a second. Give them a second. So I love trying to figure out ways for people to schedule unscheduled time, little
Mhm.
tricks that they use. So we're going to close out with a little challenge to our viewers.
Okay.
One, a couple questions. One is that tell us your concerns about fever. Tell us what your feelings are. Like, sometimes we carry these fears about fever because
Mhm.
somebody else has told us some things. And, tell me those things, right? Tell
Yeah.
us, ask us, right? Ask us whatever topics you'd like for us to join, right? And then tell us what are creative ways that you slow down your day, right? You slow down your week so that we're not getting sick on top sick and top sick, that we're listening to our bodies and our families to know what keeps us healthy. And that's not always what everyone else is doing, right? Sometimes we have to like figure out what's best for our own kids and take it to that. So
Exactly.
thank you very much for another episode of Beyond the Diaper.
Yes. Thank
With
you.
love and
This
tea
is
crab.
always
All
so
right.
fun. Thank you.
So fun. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.